Council to order.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
The City of Barrie acknowledges the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We also acknowledge the Wendat Nation Huron, who occupied these lands prior to the middle of the 17th century. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous people on this land. We are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. You may be seated. Well, welcome to Barrie City Council this evening. We'll start with the next pieces of the agenda. In terms of item 4, student mayors, there are none this evening. And we will now move on to the confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the City Council meeting held on December the 14th, 2022 have been circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, they're adopted as printed and circulated. There are no awards and recognition this evening or reports from officers. We are going to move into item 8 on our agenda, which is deputations. Tonight we have a deputation by Len Sevilla regarding motion 23-G-005, the second request for a temporary noise exemption at 37 Johnson Street for Fram and Slokker in Ward 1. An emergency deputation was received on the same matter but was later withdrawn. I'll now call upon Len Sevilla to the podium to provide the deputation. Please note that in accordance with the city's procedural bylaw, a maximum of 5 minutes is permitted for the deputation this evening. Mr. Sevilla.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to apologize. Slight slur in my speech. I had some dental work done and still feeling the effects of that. Good evening. My name is Len Sevilla. I reside at number 8 Campfire Court. It literally faces the backside of the development that's taking place at 37 Johnson Street. And I'm here tonight to oppose the noise exemption which council has supported, allowing the developer, the contractor Fram and Slokker to work past the 5 o'clock bylaw. With many new faces here, I'll start with a little history regarding the development. It was a development that was denied many times prior to Starlight's application, and it was proclaimed to be a perfect fit by Starlight, even though there were many zoning variances that were requested from coverage, setbacks, parking spaces, and onwards. It was strongly opposed by residents and businesses in the area, with a petition garnering over 400 signatures. Council unanimously denied it, and eventually it was ultimately approved by LPAT. Since the commencement of construction, many factors have contributed into a lifestyle change for my family and myself, as well as other residents. All mature trees in the cul-de-sac were cut down, which were a natural buffer from the building parking lot, and the homes on Campfire. The parking lot has since then been altered, and now vehicles park with their headlights facing all the homes on Campfire Court. The illumination goes, because of their elevation of the parking lot is higher, it goes into our bedrooms, our front living area, our kitchen, as well as there are water pumps that run, and I'm aware that it needs to be because of the high water table, that run continuously for 24/7 with strobing lights and nonstop. That droning noise is just, and it's all exaggerated by the existing building and its positioning. It just reverberates off that building, and it comes at us accentuated. Campfire Court, even though on the application, and I've been assured by building department individuals as well as Councillor Riepma that it was not to be used by any construction for construction purposes, ongoing parking, overnight dump trucks, unloading and loading of large vehicles, skid steers, forklifts driving up and down Campfire, as late as on the 13th. I have a video evidence of all this. And on several occasions, the work has already gone past 5 p.m., including on one event up to almost 10 p.m. at night. There's a blatant disregard for the city, for its laws, and for the residents by this contractor and the whole development. My main reasons for the opposition are that the area is designated as a quiet zone. Barrie Manor is literally 1 block away. It's well within the 500 meters. I believe it's almost 100 meters away. It being winter with no foliage, no dampening, the sound, the illumination is exaggerated. There's nothing there to block it. As the construction, right now they were below grade and they're at grade level. As it gets higher, the noise will even travel further. The lights will be more exaggerated because there will be no structures to dampen it. And it will reverberate off the lake. It'll go across part of the lake. And rather than deal with hypothetical propositions and what ifs about, we'll be able to enjoy our backyards in the summer, I personally, who is going to experience this, would rather know that come 5 p.m., according to our existing bylaw, I'll be able to go outside and enjoy my backyard. Know that the noise and the lights will cease. I decided to take a walk around the block on Monday evening, and within 2 hours, just to see if I was a lone wolf or how the other residents felt. It was a unanimous concession that everyone is tired. They're weary with this, with council. There's distrust of our councillor that would approve and recommend this, because we're the ones that ultimately will live with it. I would recommend that the councillor walk about and speak to his residents of his ward to get a feel. I would recommend other councillors to drive along Indian Arrow and see the abomination. It's a war zone. There are containers. There are fences literally on the curb, leaning over on the roadway. I've grown up in construction, my family's in construction, and I've never seen this take place, and not only that, but for them to get away with it. So I strongly oppose this, and not only would I recommend and appreciate if council would turn it down, that they would enforce it and make sure that the contractor does not surpass the time. I'm not asking for any concessions from the developer. I'm just asking that he abides by the existing bylaws that are in place. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you, sir, for coming out this evening, especially after having some dentistry done.
I do have that petition if you wanted to see it. It's only about 40 residents. And
Yeah, could we actually provide that to the clerk?
And
Is that
I,
okay
and
with
I
you?
even have video evidence or pictures. I'm not tech savvy. I don't know how to forward it to you, but by all means.
You and me both, sir. You and me both. Just before you go back, are there any questions for the deputy? Yes, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Actually, thank you for your deputation. I actually have a question of staff, Mr. Arangizan. Maybe if this is in your department, the gentleman was talking about like debris and stuff up the road and stuff. Has staff been out to take a look to make sure that the construction company is abiding by their staging and their site plan approval?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Deputy Mayor Thompson. So staff do go on a regular basis, but certainly after hearing the deputation today, I am making notes and will definitely make sure that the inspectors are out there first thing tomorrow morning to look at these things for sure. But they do go on a regular basis, but then sometimes they go and they leave and things change once they leave. So I will definitely flag this for them again for sure.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add one thing. I initially did not want to mention it because it's personal, but I have brought it to the attention of the councillor. All these alterations have changed our lifestyle. And when I say that, it's because we used to get together in the living area, and we've had to move and relocate. And the reason being is the lights and all the illumination, whether it be from the vehicles or whether it be from the construction. My wife had a 3.5-inch tumor removed from her brain. So the lighting can act as for another seizure. She did have one, and I've brought it to no avail. There's been no privacy fence put up along that parking. The lights are always on. But anyway, that's all I just wanted. That's what I meant by a lifestyle change because of the construction. Sorry.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask Deputy Mayor Thompson, were you going to? Yes.
Just a follow-up to Ms. Banfield. With the request for one day, has the constructor provided a working schedule that would eliminate time off the end? And maybe a follow-up to the deputation, that this is already going on, that they're working past 5. Do you think it's possible that maybe we could have staff attend to make sure that, I don't know where this will go until council votes, but if it is, that it's not happening on more than one night, that they do abide by what they've set out, and if you could just, if they've given you a schedule of the purpose for the one day, is it eliminating, time off the end of the construction?
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Deputy Mayor Thompson, I'm going to throw it to Ms. McAlpine. The actual noise request exemption came through their office.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Sorry.
Mayor Nuttall, through you, with your permission, through you to Deputy Mayor Thompson, it's my understanding, and Mr. Keene, who received the noise exemption request, can provide additional details or correct me if I'm wrong, that the constructor has indicated that permitting the noise one day a week will allow them to complete the pours. They haven't provided a specific schedule as far as I'm aware, and the noise bylaw is enforced by Barrie Police Service when they have resources available.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Before we proceed, I just, sorry, Councilor Ripa, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Thank you for your deputation, Mr. Zavella. And you did raise one question. I wanted to ask, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Banfield. You heard the comment made about the lights from the parking lot shining into Mr. Zavella's house. Is there, can we have a look at that and see if there's something we can do about that?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Riepma, absolutely. I will add that to the list to look at with staff first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
Just very quickly on your deputation, and I'm just trying to get a copy of the exact wording. Some of the items, like I said, I'm not great with technology, so I appreciate you taking the time or giving me the time here. With regards to the amendment that was placed last week, looking at blocking of lighting, I believe in there, and some of the other items, is it? And I'm just asking you to give me the complete honest. Is it your view that that just won't happen, or is it that it's not enough? And I'm just asking because
it would all be hypothetical. I couldn't answer it. I can only speak off of the precedent that's been set by the contractor, and that I have approached them. I took it upon myself to approach them when they worked late one night, and they didn't care. And I asked, and I mean, I'm not looking for any confrontation or to have an argument. I just said, why is it that you're working? Well, we got to do it. Who cares? You get lost. Who are you? I didn't answer any of the questions. I said, I was just driving around, and I was inquiring why it's almost 10 o'clock, and you're still working.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the burden should be placed on our police force. They have a lot more pressing issues to deal with these days. And I just wish that they would, as anyone would, including me as a resident, abide by the bylaws that are in place. I'm not asking for much.
thank you so much for your presentation this evening.
No problem.
Just before we move on, are there any other questions? There aren't. Thank you so much again, sir. Oh, there are. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, and thank you for your deputation, Mr. Savella. I did want to ask a question before we deliberate later on the item, because it was my understanding that through Councillor Riepma, the amendment had that balance of, while we are extending potentially one evening from the noise bylaw that currently exists, the benefit was seen to be that, one, they're pouring concrete, but two, it could expedite the timeline of the construction overall. And I wanted to know if you favored one outcome over the other. So if we have the opportunity through conversations tonight, direction to staff, as they identified, to investigate things that you brought that were of concern between the lighting, the noise, how that might be enforced. Overall, should council support this? I mean, would you rather see, if it does have an impact, removing the amendment for one night of an extended timeline and having construction go longer into the year?
I would appreciate that come 5 p.m. I know I'd rather deal with facts. Knowing that they will finish at 5, Lord willing, if it's enforced the bylaw, have it extended. The 3 hours is such an inconvenience for all the local residents, and over the 18 weeks approximately, it's 54 hours. It would be a week, even 2, have it extended twice. But at least knowing that 5 p.m., it would be done. Some of the wording and comments that I read in a paper from our Councillor Riepma was that they will hopefully have the lights out by 8 p.m., health and safety permitting. I don't want that to be another scapegoat, to sit back and say, well, we had to leave them on because there was still a guy that was working in a darker area. I don't expect them to work in the dark, because if something was to happen, Ministry of Labor would shut down the project, and it would even be extended for longer. The project is a very large development that'll take multiple years to complete. So if it's going to be an extra 2 weeks, it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful
You're
to
very
know.
welcome.
That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Thank you, sir, for your presentation this evening, as well as answering all of the questions. And we will be moving on to those items here in a few minutes.
I'm free to leave? I'm free to leave?
Sure, or take a seat if you
No,
like.
no,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
leave the podium, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's the old saying, you don't have to leave, but you can't stay here, right? Now that we've completed the deputations, and as I mentioned earlier, the previous request for an emergency deputation was withdrawn. There are no tax applications or communications, so we will go to committee reports. Deputy Mayor Thompson, I believe you have some motions.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales, the General Committee report dated December 20, 2022, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales that General Committee report dated December 20th, 2022, as circulated, be received. This is 22-G-185, confidential education and training session. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. Those in favor? It's approved. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales, that Section A of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales that Section A of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23-G-001, grant application for Skills Development Fund, Round 3, supported by Georgian College. 23-G-002, lease of city-owned property, 24 Maple Avenue. 23-G-003, schedule of the City Council and General Committee agenda for 2023 to 2026. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's approved. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales, that Section B of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be received.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales that Section B of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be received. This is 23-G-004, report of the Community Safety Committee dated December the 20th, 2022. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? It's approved. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales, that Section C of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Robert Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales, that Section C of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23-G-005, and it's a second request for a temporary noise exemption at 37 Johnson Street, Barrie for Fram and Slokker, Ward 1. Are there any questions or comments regarding them? Yes, Councillor Kungle.
As it pertains to the motion tabled with the amendment, I believe item 3 talks about that failure to comply with the actions detailed will result in the exemption being revoked. I was wondering if, whether it's through you to CEO Prowse or a redirection to staff, knowing that, as Ms. McAlpine identified, that the noise after that hours does fall under the jurisdiction of police, not city bylaw officers, how would we identify a breach of this understanding? And is there a process we should appreciate around a timeline that's given for correction, or is an immediate withdrawal and default back to no exemptions across the board? Could you identify how a breach would be managed?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle, thank you for the question. So While the noise bylaw, this portion of the noise bylaw is enforced by Barrie Police, certainly if municipal law enforcement became aware during a period when we were able to address it with staff, there were continuing breaches, we would advise that the noise exemption had been revoked. That could come through residents contacting municipal law enforcement, or it could be through Barrie Police advising that they'd received complaints. In terms of actually stopping the work, though, that's not something that our municipal law enforcement officers are in a position to stop a construction company that's in the midst of the work. A single municipal law enforcement officer with no equipment to protect them is certainly not going to take that on for their health and safety.
If I may, a follow-up question. In the case by which there was a failure to comply with maybe a retraction of this exemption, would there be fines set in place that are built into this, or what would be important for the public to be aware of if there's a sensitivity around managing expectations?
There is the potential to lay a fine or a charge against the owner. Typically, and I'll refer to Mr. Keene for specific details. However, there must be the ability to prove that the noise was happening in contravention at the time past the hours permitted. And perhaps, Mr. Keene, if you have a moment to share what the typical fine amounts are that are supported by the courts, that would be great.
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Nuttall, to Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Congo. There are set fines that are in place for enforcing construction noise under the bylaw. They do come with a restriction of the amount of the fine. If it was something that was taking place on more than one occasion, we could go directly to court and file a motion through the court to request a higher fine or penalty amount, depending on the circumstances, for sure.
Thank you. And then last question, should it be through to Ms. Banfield or Ms. James Reed, tied to communications? So knowing this is a sensitive area, and I know Councillor Rietma has been doing a lot of communication on this, because we're doing an exemption, that kind of triggers, if I'm hearing correctly, the actions by residents in the area and or complaints through to Barrie Police if it's about the noise. Would it be a situation by which we would ever do a direct mail out to a particular neighborhood area to let them know, one, this exemption has happened if it passes, so they can manage that expectation and are not calling in on times that might be warranted, but two, know when to go to Barrie Police appropriately and know when to go to bylaw appropriately?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle, we certainly can do that, and I would work closely with Ms. Banfield on that as we move forward.
Thank you. So I definitely appreciate the concerns spoken by Ms. Savella and the history of this development. I also appreciate the accommodation and that balance Councillor Rietma has brought forward around noting that they're at a particular point in pouring concrete and to try and expedite where possible a minimal exemption. And that's a difficult thing to do. But I am supportive at this point in time in the amendment put forward. I'm very pleased to hear that the concerns raised by Mr. Savella can be looked at in an expedient manner, being opportunities for privacy fencing, mitigating the lighting, and other considerations. And in particular, happy to hear that we can put information in the hands of residents so they can help to kind of identify concerns ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Ms. McAlpine.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, for the opportunity to add some information. I believe when Councillor Rietma amended the motion, as he chose an alternative in the staff report to the staff recommendation, that alternative highlighted and he included in the amendment that as we typically would with a noise exemption, that the requester is responsible for notifying everybody within the area and providing city staff with a list of everyone who is notified. So I just wanted to add that information as context, with their contact information as well.
Councillor?
That's very helpful. Thank you, Ms. McAlpine. So is there a flow of, should this pass, when it goes into effect based on after the point at which a communication has gone forward? So they're not starting this type of exemption and disruption before there's been a communication that they are responsible for.
Thank you. Yes, there would be a time frame for them to have provided the notice before the exemption takes place.
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Rittman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think that this discussion very much brings forward how disruptive construction like this is to a neighborhood. And certainly we've heard from Mr. Zavella, and I've certainly heard from a lot of other neighbors in terms of the issues that they've raised, and that's, you know, concrete trucks, parking all over the place, noise, lights, you know, you name it, it has happened there. And this contractor has, not started off on a good foot with the neighborhood. And I think that's regrettable, and it's really disruptive. This is an attempt to kind of manage the situation better, because first of all, we're going to, while we do increase the hours that they can make noise, it is limited to one night a week, and it's limited to 8 o'clock. And it's limited also to the 1st of June. So at the moment, people are not out in their backyards enjoying the sunshine. We haven't had any for a long time. But in the summertime, when June comes, that's when I'm expecting that people will be out there, and we will then limit the noise back down to 5 o'clock. So this gives us a chance to get the majority of this noisy work done during the winter time as quickly as we possibly can get it done and get them out of the neighborhood's hair. I think the other part of this amendment also gives us some control over the lighting, and gives us also more control over the boulevard and the mess that's there sometimes. And as Ms. McAlpine indicated, this amendment also includes a notification to the neighborhood of this noise situation, and gives them the phone numbers of the people to contact if they have an issue. And it's true, there's no perfect answer to this one, but I think this is fairly short term, and it's probably the best that we can do to help the neighborhood out at this point. So I'm asking for your support, and as Ms. McAlpine indicated, that is, if there is an issue, we can withdraw this very quickly, and then they're back to where they were. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rittman. Over to Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Through you to staff. When it comes to the amount of complaints, is anybody able to advise us how many complaints has been received from this particular site since they've began their work?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. I don't have an exact number of the amount of complaints. We have received complaints on and off, all the way from September all the way through to late December. I'm not aware of any new complaints since the start of this year. However, I'm sure there are still some issues.
Great, thank you. And a follow-up to that. Now, this amendment allows them to extend their hours by 2 hours once a week. What type of controls would be put in place if this motion passes to know which day of the week they've decided to extend their hours? Because from what I'm hearing, it seems like this is a developer that hasn't been playing by the rules so far, and I'm not so comfortable that they're going to continue to play by the rules moving forward if this does pass. So what type of controls does enforcement plan on putting in place to keep tabs on which day of the week they're going to be using each week as we move forward?
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Harvey. Staff did not recommend this particular motion, but we would certainly request a timeline from the contractor, so that could be shared with Barrie Police and amongst the municipal law enforcement officers. And if noise is occurring past that time on a date and complaints are received, then it could be actioned in terms of revoking the noise permit exemption.
Great, thank you. After listening to the deputant and also listening to some of the responses that I've received and some of my colleagues have received, I am no longer comfortable with this amendment. I think we've got a developer in the area that has already shown that they're not going to play by the rules, and with that being said, there's nothing to guarantee that they're going to play by the rules moving forward. It's going to cause extreme additional work on staff to literally have to visit this site every day at 5 o'clock to see whether or not they're shutting down, to determine whether or not they're actually abiding by the bylaw, because realistically they could be extending 2 to 4 days a week and we would have no idea. And I don't think it should be incumbent on our residents to be our eyes and ears when it comes to enforcement issues like this. Even when the deputant was here at General Committee last week, when he was inquiring as to when he would be able to speak, one thing that caught my attention was the fact that he spoke about the fact that he had left his house around 6:30 and they were still even working that day. So my comfort level that this amendment is going to provide to the developer has really depleted. I don't think that they're going to start playing by the rules all of a sudden, because now we've even given them a looser chain opposed to tightening the chain. So I say that I will not be supporting this moving forward, and I would hope some of my colleagues would reconsider, given all of the parameters that we've heard here this evening.
Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and well said, Councillor Harvey. And the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And what has been shared with us is that the past behavior, current behavior, is problematic and not necessarily constituting being rewarded for changes that would be in their favor. So, and also, I haven't seen the petition, but Mr. Savella seemed exceptionally credible, and thank you for coming tonight. So he's gone through the neighborhood, and I can understand the importance of wanting to expedite the experience that you're having with a development happening in your backyard, in your community. But you're saying, and I hear you saying, your neighbors don't want an exemption given to make this potentially go faster, but only to make it more aggravating in the current term. So for those reasons, I agree with the staff report, and I will not support the amendment. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So we approved it last week, and reading the staff report, and and I understand the frustration of the resident, and Councillor Reitman has tried to balance it. My comfort level really depleted when they couldn't give a hard and fast time by allowing this exemption if it removed 3, and by the residents saying that it's a long project, that most people are at work during the day, so when they come home, the 8 o'clock is actually affecting their home life, that they're not just in from work. So I understand that Councillor Reitman was trying to balance, to speed up the process and trying to eliminate, the concerns of residents at the same time. With the resident going and getting, by the sounds of it, 100% of the residents affected, I won't be supporting this as of tonight as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Morales?
All right, Council, we can make questions or comments, right? Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I just want to clarify one thing. So This development wasn't approved by council to the deputy and anybody else who's interested. This was approved by the appeal board. OLT, LPAT changes every couple months. And to clarify, Councilor Reid was not at fault of this development being approved. This was something by the former council, of which only I was on. For context purposes, you are all absolved of that reality. That's not to suck up. That's to give context of this is on the plate now, everybody here, and kudos to Councilor Reitma for making tough but unpopular decisions on dealing with this development. I will always support a councillor who makes tough and unpopular decisions. We weren't elected to do what is popular, we were elected to do what is right. So I want to say that very clearly. That said, I get what my colleagues are saying about developer hasn't shown a track record of honoring their commitments already, so why do we extend more? Fair point. On the flip side, I don't want to support a motion that is punitive necessarily, or not supporting this amendment to myself would almost be punitive, even though it's a recommended motion. I'm also struggling with the fact that at the end of the day, it's not about getting developer or throwing one more wrench just to kind of stick it to them. Listen, the building's already approved. It's going to go up. Nothing you do can stop that. So from that perspective, we need more housing. This building getting done earlier means X number of families, individuals having a roof over their head earlier. Great question by Deputy Mayor Thompson. Is that 1 month earlier? Is that 6 months earlier? We don't have a clear answer. So I'm really struggling with this one because I get the point about like the developer hasn't exactly shown a track record of stepping up, and they've already disrespected existing bylaws and by extension disrespecting the residents. I get that. But not supporting the amendment for me would almost feel like saying, okay, well, we're just going to double down on the fire, and it might cost a couple of months. And again, getting units to market where people are living in them, in the reality of the rental affordability issue we have, rental availability, I don't care how much these units are, is crucial. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is a complex one. If any other member of council is going to speak, if you've noticed my words, I'm kind of still in the middle. But I did want to say that I think it's unfair to listen, I don't care if we all go on the street right now, you're not going to have 100% unison take on this. And we're not here to make the popular decisions, we're here to make the hard ones. So I do want to give kudos to Councillor Reitma for approaching this, specifically with the fleshed out paragraphs, especially number 3.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. Are there any other questions or comments around the table? Councillor Corser.
My concerns with this is, as has been repeated across the table, is that this developer has obviously shown no respect to the neighborhood or to our bylaws. They are ones to give them an inch, they'll take a mile, obviously. So allowing this without a hard deadline or any kind of number of how this is going to help speed up the project, without them providing some definitive information on that. And also, I can appreciate the neighbors the community having to have this kind of thing going on. It might stop a week, it might create a week less on the deadline of that building going up, but it creates weeks of stress on a neighborhood that builds up to that. So with that, I can not support this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corser. Any other questions or comments around the table? Seeing none, I'm going to weigh in on this as well. And first of all, sir, one of the things that I wanted to comment, and I couldn't comment earlier with regards to the deputation, during the deputation, but I just want to address one of the items there, and it's Councillor Morales started on it, and I just want to finish the thought for you. What Councillor Reitma was doing here was trying to find a way to balance it out. I've watched his career over time, and I know where he stands when it comes to his residents, and quite frankly, he's been trying to do the right thing, and I think if all things were equal and everything could be taken at face value, I think that's where he got. What I heard tonight from the deputant, what we've seen in writing over time here, is that the current rules aren't being followed. And, you know, I don't have a natural belief that developers are bad, but when developers are bad, they're bad. It's just the way it is. And I think going forward for the community there, you know, we've spent about, let's say, half an hour on this right now. This entire decision is about 51 hours, 17 weeks, maybe 54 hours max. And I fail to see how this is worth going to our staff and saying, please manage what night of the week they're going to stay longer, or is it a weekend? It's a very, very difficult thing when we're looking at the nuts and bolts of it. And so I'm actually not going to support the item as we voted on last week. But I do want to commend the councillor for trying to balance all these things, bring them together, try to get it done quicker so it's out of people's hair faster. And, you know, after hearing some of the updates this week and now hearing this evening, I want to say thank you, sir, for coming out on behalf of your community and for alerting us to some of the issues. And I think one of the, you know, notwithstanding the issues that you're dealing with personally inside of your home due to it, one of the things that I find very difficult to hear is that there would be fencing or debris over a sidewalk. That is something that we need to make sure that we're enforcing for accessibility reasons, and it's also something for safety and liability reasons. And so I think that you'll see more eyes over there in the next few days, certainly, and hopefully longer term. Just before we go to vote, are there any other questions or concerns, because some haven't spoken? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. Those in favor of the motion as it is written on the floor? Those who are opposed? The motion has failed. Yes, certainly. Our clerk has asked me to make sure everyone understands what just occurred. So what just occurred was the essentially the rejection of an extension to the noise bylaw, which is in agreement with what your deputation was this evening, sir. Okay?
I thought that it was going to be extended to another date, or has it been voted on?
As of right now, it's been defeated.
Oh. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales, that Section G of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and it's seconded by Councillor Morales that Section D of the General Committee report dated January 11, 2023 as circulated be adopted. It's 23-G-006. Correspondence from the circulation list dated January 11, 2023 regarding the Barrie Farmers Market. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll be voting against referring this to finance. This letter's something. I don't believe that it requires referring it to our finance committee. I think this council in one way or another over 12 years has made strides towards that, and some of the points contained in this letter are questionable if spoken on behalf of the organization, the individual themselves, and I think I'll just receive it for information because it was emailed to me, but I'll be voting against referring it to the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Kungle.
So I'll speak to it because I think I tabled the request around referral. And that was not just the letter, but also I believe the piece in the circulation list was the one item that was identified formally. So we'd like to investigate further the identification of the benefits of the $25,000 that council had approved in the past to the farmers market to go mobile. And then in other correspondence, I believe the interest around location. So we'd like to have the opportunity to engage the Barrie Farmers Market in some way at that committee around looking at, is there an ask in that? What's the intention? And to do that in short order rather than it coming separately. Should there be an ask knowing that we're going into budget? But also, if that's not in the budget binders that we'll be receiving, maybe forecasting, knowing that that had a great revenue support and engagement support, clarifying if there's a formal ask.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this referral to committee? Seeing none, those in favor on my right and on my left. It's approved. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales, that motion 23G-008 of Section E of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023 be separated and reintroduced as Section I. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales, that Section E of General Committee report dated January 11, 2023, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Morales that Section E of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be received. This is 23-G-007, confidential potential disposition of property rights and instructions to be applied to negotiations on behalf of the municipality, negotiation of potential land lease for local branch of a national charity, portion of Mapleview Drive and Bayview Drive. It's 23-G-008, confidential personal information matter, appointment to the Police Services Board, and it's 23-G-009, confidential personal information matter, appointments to various boards and committees of council. I believe there's an amendment. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morales that motion 23G-008 of Section E of the General Committee report dated January 11, 2023 be separated and reintroduced as Section I.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Morales that motion 23-G-008 of Section E of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023 be separated and reintroduced as Section I. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Nuttall. This is just a little bit of housekeeping. We have a member who has to declare, and it just needs to be in public forum. Sorry to the police board appointee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Are there any questions or comments regarding the amendment to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. On the main motion as amended. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales, that Section F of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Morales that Section F of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. Negotiation of potential land lease for local branch national charity portion of Mapleview Drive and Bayview Drive. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales, that Section G of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Morales that Section G of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23-G-011, appointment to Barrie Police Services Board. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. In order to meet my legislative requirements under Section 17, Sub 3 of the Police Services Act, I will not participate in any discussion or vote on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Morales, that Section H of the General Committee report dated January 11, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales that Section H of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. It's 23-G-012, appointments to various boards and committees of Council. Deputy Mayor Thompson? Oh, sorry, Councillor Morales?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Have an amendment to this and putting it on the floor as I'm reading it. That motion 23-G-012 of Section H of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023 be amended as follows. To refer the appointments of the Committee of Adjustment back to General Committee for further review and consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. It's moved by Councillor Morales and seconded by Councillor Hamilton that motion 23-G-012 of Section H of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023 be amended as follows: to refer the appointments to the Committee of Adjustment back to General Committee for further review and consideration. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the amendment on the motion?
Do you want me to speak to it, Mayor Nuttall, or we're good?
That's I think we're all good.
I think we're good.
Yeah. If seeing no comments or questions, we will move to the vote. All those in favor? And it's passed. Now the motion as amended, which is Section H. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Morales, that Section I of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be received.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Sergio Morales that Section I of the General Committee report dated January 11th, 2023, as circulated, be received. 23-G-008, confidential personal information matter, appointment to the Police Services Board. Are there any questions? Oh. Yes,
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Have to declare on this half of it again, too. So in order to meet my legislative requirements under Section 17, Sub 3 of the Police Services Act, I will not participate in any discussion or vote on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the item on the floor? Seeing none, those in favor? And it carries. At this time, before we move on to direct motions, we're going to take a 10-minute recess to reconvene at
8:15 p.m.
call it to order. I think we're a little late back here, but thank you for your indulgence. We will now move on to direct motions. Councillor Harvey.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kungl that a motion without notice to support the 2023 International Ice Hockey Federation Women's Hockey Championships pre-competition host community support, that pursuant to Section 7.1 of the Procedural Bylaw 2019-100, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning support for the 2023 International Ice Hockey Federation Women's World Hockey Championship pre-competition host community support.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Harvey and seconded by Councillor Kungl that a motion without notice support for 2023 International Ice Hockey Federation IIHF Women's World Hockey Championships pre-competition host community opportunity, that pursuant to Section 7.1 of the Procedural Bylaw 2019-100, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning support for the 2023 International Ice Hockey Federation IIHF Women's World Hockey Championship pre-competition host community opportunity. Are there any questions or comments on the motion without notice? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's approved. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lettle, and thank you to everybody around the table for permitting this to come forward. The reason this is coming forward as a direct motion is due to a strict timeline when it comes to the submissions and the cutoff date or deadline that is set by Hockey Canada when it comes to these submissions. So moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kungl, that whereas the 2023 IIHF World Women's Hockey Championship will be hosted by Hockey Canada and the Ontario Women's Hockey Association in Brampton, Ontario from April 5th to the 16th, 2023. And whereas Hockey Canada is currently seeking proposals from interested communities who would like to act as a World Championship pre-competition host, with 5 Ontario communities selected to each host 2 of the international teams that will spend 7 to 10 days in their host community for a pre-competition training camp along with at least 1 exhibition game. And whereas the Barrie Women's Hockey Association is working with the City of Barrie Recreation and Culture Services Department, Tourism Barrie, and several other community and business partners to submit a host community proposal to Hockey Canada. And whereas the Barrie Women's Hockey Association and Tourism Barrie have both committed $5,000 for a total of $10,000 towards hosting activities for the international teams. And whereas being a pre-competition host community will yield positive benefit to the community, including an estimated economic impact of over $119,711 according to Ontario Ministry of Tourism TREAM report methodology, along with provincial, national, and international exposure for our community, and will also be an important community to showcase Barrie as an excellent destination for future high-level sports events. And whereas support from elected officials is a requirement of Hockey Canada for any proposal to be considered. Now therefore be it resolved that as follows: 1, that a letter be issued through the Mayor's Office expressing Barrie City Council's support for the Barrie Women's Hockey Association's pre-competition host community proposal for the 2023 IIHF Women's World Hockey Championships. 2, that the usage of city recreation facilities by the IIHF international teams during the period of March 24th, 2023 to April 5th, 2023 be supported, subject to Hockey Canada's approval of a 2023 IIHF World Women's Hockey Championships pre-competition community hosting proposal and facility availability. And 3, that the city commit a matching contribution of $5,000 to support hosting activities to be funded from the MAT Reserve, subject to Hockey Canada's approval of a 2023 IIHF World Women's Hockey Championships pre-competition community hosting proposal for Barrie.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I appreciate your moving the motion and the seconding by Councillor Kungl. It's support for 2023 International Ice Hockey Federation Women's World Hockey Championships, the pre-competition host community opportunity. I'm not going to go through all of the verbiage unless I absolutely have to, which I do, apparently. No, I do not. Fantastic. Fantastic. And so we will proceed with the motion on the floor. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. As I mentioned earlier, obviously we're under a tight timeline when it comes to the submissions, and the deadline date is set by Hockey Canada. But the application, if successful, could bring international women's hockey to Barrie for a 7 to 10 day period, leading up to the World Championships being hosted in Brampton. Bringing elite level hockey to the area will also help inspire our next generation when they see, especially too, since obviously we have our own local girl, Jessie Eldridge, who's currently on Team Canada herself and just won a gold medal. So there's actually minimal financial loss when you look at what's being proposed, and that we've got good partners. So in leading up to this, there was many discussions behind the scenes, and when it comes to organizing this, and I think thanks do go out to the OHL Barrie Colts and also the Mariposa School of Skating for their cooperation in being able to bring this in front of council today, as they were two user groups that were going to be affected by this change, and so they've graciously agreed to be able to maneuver their times around any scheduling conflicts, whether it goes to other arenas or even rescheduling times within the Sadlin. Most of the ice time that's going to be used, especially for those practice sessions, will be during the daytime hours, where right now, obviously, most of those hours the arena would be sitting vacant, and that I think when you look at, obviously it's not a huge financial impact, but when you look at the impact when it comes to moving forward with other bids, because we weren't successful with the curling bid, but if we can be successful with a bid of this stature, it starts building some momentum for bigger and better things coming to the Sadlin, because we do have a nice facility. We've got a really nice waterfront community, and if we can showcase that internationally, it's only going to help the city moving forward. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Barrie Women's Hockey Association, city staff, and Tourism Barrie for all the behind-the-scenes work that's gone into this application leading up to tonight's meeting to be able to get us to where we are today. How many people are going to be applying for this, I have no idea, but there will be 5 select cities, and I think when you look at our proximity to Brampton, I think we're in pretty good running when it comes to being selected out of those 5 cities. Those are my comments, and I don't know if the seconder of this would like to add anything.
Councillor Kungl.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And again, thank you to Council for the accommodation around getting this on the table for discussion. As Councillor Harvey noted, the formal deadline for this proposal is on the 25th of January. So this is our only opportunity to really have it before us and discuss. To that matter, all things said, I mean, it's great to put a spotlight on women in sport and in general to also attract individuals from a tourism, but to showcase through this, which I believe will be a really great opportunity, is putting spotlights on the Barrie Women's Hockey Association. So in addition to that, I think it's a great opportunity when we see the strength of our partnerships. And from a tourism to Dan and the team with our recreation and culture, to the Hockey Association and other partners, as noted, Mariposa Skate and Barrie Colts, these types of proposals really do depend, to be successful, on identifying municipal support. So not just the letter, but also being willing to kind of embrace this and support it through other means. I know we'll get more details should we be successful around what that looks like and what might transition. But I think from there, the best of Barrie is often showcased through proposals. So I do appreciate the concerted effort. It doesn't always necessarily allow for really great dialogue around exploring all opportunities, but I think it doesn't mean it's off the table. So here's hoping we get selected, and then we can return to talking about how do we best support this moving forward and showing our best face forward at an international scale.
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to the motion on the floor? Councillor Harris.
Thank you. I will be supportive, and just maybe as a general comment, this is a world championship. Like, this is significant, and not that Hockey Canada needs my comment, but roughly 2 months out, and they're selecting cities to host people from around the world. So Hockey Canada, I know you've been in the news for maybe a lot of the wrong reasons, but I think this is, hopefully you do better by women's hockey than rushing out opportunities at a late time. And thank you to everybody in Barrie for trying to make it happen for our local women's hockey organization, who will enjoy this and benefit from it, but that's a disappointment to see it so late. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Kungl, your microphone's on. I am going to weigh in on this, and for a number of reasons. I'm going to support the motion on the floor. The reason I'm going to support the $5,000 is solely from essentially where it's coming from. It's coming from the tourism sector, who's putting their own money behind it and requesting this to happen. So in a way, they're asking for their own money to be used on this World Championship. At the same time, I have some real issues, and because this is the first time that we are discussing something like this, I just want to voice my opinion on it. And I'm one of 11, and I know that that is all around this table. I have a real issue with the use of public funds taken from people who can't afford to play hockey to allow, in this case, foreign nationals to come in and use our rinks. And because it's not in kind, I am willing to support. If it was in kind, if we're taking money from people who can't afford to play hockey, for people who aren't even contributing to our community to be able to play on those rinks, I have a real issue with that. A real issue with that. Secondly, in terms of Hockey Canada, you know, Councillor Harris, you touched on it. I think if there was ever a time that Hockey Canada should be stepping up and fully funding women's hockey, it's now. It is now. And the reality is it should have been a while ago, but we have the control of now. Finally on this, you know, I want to see a very successful championship come to Barrie. I do. I really do. To the point where, unbeknownst to regarding the motion, I actually emailed our staff and said, this is a pretty neat opportunity. And to that end, I know we're going to be putting some sort of bid if this passes this evening. I do want it noted that we have a very, very, very giving community that steps up to the plate time after time after time to make sure that these sorts of events can happen. And so as we go forward, if this is successful tonight and then we're actually successful, I know that there will be an incredible host community on a plethora of fronts. And I'm very confident of that, and I'm very excited by it. So I'll leave my comments there. Make sure there's no other questions or comments. And seeing none, I'll call the vote on the motion. All those in favor? It's approved. Now that we have dealt with the two direct motions, it's now time for presentations. Our next presentation is by Mr. Craig Miller, Chief Financial Officer, concerning the 2023 Business Plan and Budget presentation. I'd like to call Mr. Miller up to the microphone to present to folks in the chamber and at home.
I think that beep means I should start now. So thank you, Mayor Nuttall and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2023 business plan and budget. So I'm here to present a high-level summary of where we're at, and then we've provided you all with two big binders for you to go home and do lots of reading over the next number of weeks. I get to stand here and give the high-level overview, but it wasn't me that put all this together. It actually was a big team across this city. A lot of the people that are here today, every department works on the budget, as well as our service partners. So it's a big effort, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Craig Gillespie for his leadership in the corporate finance team, as well as Kelly Oakley, who plays a big part in her asset management team, helping us with the capital plan. And of course, our friends in Access Barrie, who did a fantastic job and worked very hard over the last number of weeks to produce a rather, I think, very visually appealing business binder. So what is the business planning and budget all about, really? And it's really how council and staff allocate resources to deliver on council's strategic plan. It's how we fund our 60-plus services that the city provides. So if you step back for a minute and just think about what does that entail, a lot of every day, pretty much the residents and businesses of Barrie use our services, from drinking the clean water to flushing, to doing laundry, having showers, to where the water goes down into the wastewater. We have stormwater services. You go for a walk on our sidewalks, you drive on our roads, we have traffic lights. You might go for a nice walk in one of Barrie's many beautiful parks, go take some courses or do some physical exercise at our community centers, grab a book at the library. And as you're walking down the street, you may see a fire truck, an ambulance, police, emergency services that are there for you 24 hours, 7 days a week. The city of Barrie pays or provides these services. So there's a lot that we do here at the city. So just to summarize the process, for those of you that are new to council, you may not know that we actually started this process way back in May of 2022. And at that time, we did do a memo to council where we identified some high-pressure challenges we foresaw coming up with the 2023 budget, such as inflation, high interest rates, labor negotiations, and that would be pressures that impact our 2023 budget. And here we are today on January 18th, 2023, and pretty much those assumptions were all true and real, and I think we can all agree that we are living in that environment. We had some legislative changes at the provincial level that also threw a few wrenches in our plans, but we proceed forward. So some key dates for you going forward is on February 1st, the service partners will be here to present, and it's the three largest service partners from a financial standpoint, that being the police service, library, and the county of Simcoe. And then on the following week, on February 8th, is a budget deliberation night, and we do provide a staff report for you as part of that consideration. And then on February 15th, it's council approval. So we got roughly a month to get the budget approved. So as I say, they're two big binders, and we have some, hopefully you'll have some time to start reading through them. So just before we get into the details, I would like to kind of point out is what guiding principles does staff and council use to put together the binder. The city does have a financial policy framework which was updated in 2021 as part of a long-range financial plan. And that's sort of a framework that kind of gives us all guidelines and targets and keeps us in the straight and narrow. And then as part of that, we have financial policies such as our capital financing and debt policy. We also have a purchasing bylaw, which is really driven by contract law, but the purpose of it is to keep us on side, but also bring value to the city and taxpayers. And then worth noting that in the past, I think it was 2015, Council introduced the dedicated infrastructure renewal fund, where each year 1% is added to the contribution to the capital reserves to help fund our renewal needs. We had a bit of a slowdown during COVID to keep, Council decided to help keep the tax rate down. There was a bit of a pause on it, but without those decisions of past Council, we wouldn't be able to achieve a lot of the renewal work that the city has done over that time. So putting those all together is why last year Standard & Poor's increased the city's credit rating from AA to AA+, which is a big accomplishment for the city. Now, having said that, there's always items to be weary of or cautious of. And while we do have capital reserves and we do contribute to them, they are under pressure. We have a lot of renewal needs at the city at the same time as we are growing, as we have been planning for this for many years, and we're going to continue to grow. We have development charge reserves that are needed to fund all the growth infrastructure, but they are under pressure, and with the current economic conditions, it's something we'll have to monitor going forward. So again, 2023 and beyond, I think this is, while we're treating it as a one-year budget, it's really, these pressures are going to exist most likely during your term of council. Just as everyone at home, residents are facing inflation and higher interest costs, as are businesses. So is the city of Barrie. When you run 60-plus services, you are dealing with these high costs of everything. The other pressures we need to really keep an eye on, that we have been building new infrastructure, new roads, new pipes to support the building of new homes. With that comes operating costs as they start to come online. And at the end of the day, resources are needed to maintain those roads, to maintain fire halls. So we're starting to get that point that infrastructure is coming online, that we start to have to build up resources to support them. Another item to look out for sort of this year and next year is our capital county of Simcoe reserve. So the city has a reserve that we use to pay our capital commitments to the county of Simcoe. They do have an extensive capital plan, and our reserve that we fund with is under pressure. So over this year and the next few years, Council's going to need to take a look at it, and we develop a financial strategies to making sure we continue to fund that reserve. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about Bill 23 and the impact on development charge collections, so we are working through that process. Staff are actually working on an updated development charge background study, as we were directed to by the past council. And we'll be bringing that to council in the spring, and as part of that exercise, we'll have a better understanding of the impact of Bill 23, and we'll look for opportunities and develop a strategy for funding our capital needs as we go into the 2024 capital budget process. And then, of course, with the economy, high interest rates, developers are facing the pressure, I'm sure. We'll have to really monitor their amount of building that they are able to do. As we have invested a lot, the city has invested a lot of money building new infrastructure. We really need to see those homes and residents built. Obviously, there's a need for it, but also from a financial perspective, we have needs to collect the development charge revenues with that. So lots on the agenda. When I started working in municipal finance, I had some friends that say, "Why would you want to go into municipal finance? It's pretty boring." And I got to tell you, it's not. So if you do a big drum roll, as everyone's asking, what's the tax rate or the proposed tax rate that staff are bringing forward? And this is the point of this slide. So there are a lot of numbers. I'm not going to run through every single one, but just to give you a general concept, we try and break our budget into building blocks to help you to help everyone understand the pressures that we face. So we break it into the first line is maintaining service levels for city operations. So that's at our existing services. What does it cost today compared to last year? And that's what the first line on the very top there. Oh, apparently I have a pointer here. It's not pointing. But the very first line is the $8 million. And what that represents is the net impact of increases related to new contract costs being labor, being cost for delivering of transit, waste services, those type of costs, and netted against that number would be new revenues, so new fees that we introduce. So bringing that all together, we're at 8.1 million, and the next column, the tax rate impact, represents the impact on the average assessed home in Barrie. So to maintain everything else as is, it would be 2.66%, or as I say, $8.1 million. And if you walk down the next line, you'll see decreased operational subsidy of $4.7 million. What that number is made up of, if those that were on council last year will remember, we had some Safe Start money that was given to municipalities from the federal and provincial governments to help reopen the economy up from the effects of COVID-19. So last year we had used, there was $2.5 or $4 million available that we used, brought in as revenue to help offset some of the property tax pressures. In addition to that, there was another $2.3 million that was used from reserve, from the tax capital reserve and the reinvestment reserve to help offset cost pressures last year. So now in 2023, the Safe Start money we don't have this year, and then right now the proposed budget doesn't include using those reinvestment reserve and tax stabilization funds that were introduced last year. So the impact of that's $4.75 million. We do have some reductions, you'll see. Debt management, we actually are paid off some debts that matured at the end of this 2022, so there's savings in there of $870,000. You'll also notice reserve contributions. That excludes the DERF and the County of Simcoe Capital Reserve contributions, so there's a reduction there of $6.6 million. That's actually part and parcel with the stormwater fee, which I'll talk about later slides. We'll now be shifting costs from property taxes onto the user rate stormwater charge. So that reduces the contribution to the tax capital reserve, as we will be forming a stormwater capital reserve to fund our stormwater needs. New investments and service recommendations of $1.3 million. So when you open up your binder, there's a section about new investments and service recommendations. There's what we call intake forms in there that describe what it is we're recommending. Again, a lot of it ties into, we've built a lot of new infrastructure, and we need resources to support that infrastructure. But the net impact on that is $1.3 million. And then the last line there is this estimated assessment growth of $4 million. So with all the investment in infrastructure the city's doing, we are growing, and some of the return on investment from a financial aspect would be more homes are being built, assessment base of the city is growing, so it's additional revenue coming into the city, and we're at $4 million. So the grand total for city operations is $2.6 million, or a 0.88% impact on the average taxpayer. The next line groups all our service partner. That would be the police, library, conservation authorities. When we net all their year-over-year changes together, the net impact is $6.3 million, or 2% on the average taxpayer's bill. And then, of course, the last line, staff are recommending continuation of the dedicated infrastructure renewal funding and putting it back up to 1%, and that results in a $3 million impact on the property tax. So you add them all up, and we get to 3.95% for an average assessed value property in Barrie. And I'm going to underline, this is assessed value. The province hasn't reassessed properties since 2016. So the average assessed value is $365,000, and that's an impact of 3.95%, or $182 on an annual basis. So that, Mayor Nuttall and Council, that is where we're beginning our budget deliberations. So just a big picture view, our total gross budget's $408 million, so this is the tax-supported budget. And out of that, 69% is funded from property taxes. That's $283 million. I won't go through all the different parts of the chart here, but I'll just call out that the second largest number is contribution from reserves. So those are our city reserves at $43 million or 11%. So that would include, we have debt financing costs in our operating budget, and we pull approximately $24 million from the development charge reserves to fund those costs. We also have capital recoveries. So there are staff whose main jobs are to work on capital infrastructure. So their salaries do get charged back to capital projects. So that gets pulled from our reserves. But they are, I stress this, these are from our own city reserves. And then the other next item on there is $35 million or 9% are fees, services, service charges. So that would really be your rec fees, your transit fees, late fees, anything else with a fee goes into that bucket. And again, it's $35 million. So if you reduce any of those numbers, then any of the service fees or contributions from reserve, then it ends up increasing your tax levy number. Switching over, so we have a tax rate budget. We also have a user fees budget, and we have, this year we'll have 4 of them, but the main ones are water, wastewater, and parking. So water and wastewater, a highly regulated industry. Under water, you are required to have a financial plan that shows that you are running a financially sustainable water system. The city did approve an updated water and wastewater financial plan, I believe in 2021. The rate increases do mirror the recommendations in those reports. So for water, it's 3.7%, which from memory, if you allow me to check my notes here, from memory, I believe it's an impact of 1375 on an annual basis. The 5% impact on wastewater is an impact of $26.54. Parking this year in the budget, there's no recommendation for a rate charge. And just quickly, we did a presentation to council in November on the stormwater charge. But again, the overall concept is we're taking $10.5 million, that's the existing service level that we pay from property taxes to fund stormwater, that's both operating and capital, taking it off the tax levy, and now we're introducing a user fee system so that the highest contributors will pay into that. Because this is the first year of the implementation, the recommendation is the billing begins on April 1st. So for the first 3 months of the year, staff have recommended that we use some federal gas tax, $2.6 million, to help with the first quarter, and also to help property owners and businesses deal with the implementation of the new plan. So for 2023, the recommendation is staff, our residents and businesses will be paying 9 months. So for the average homeowner, when it was on the property taxes, an annual charge was $174, whereas going forward, the stormwater rate, an annual charge is $129 or $10.75 a month. But for 2023, the total cost for 9 months for a resident is $96.75. So switching over to the capital plan, the objectives of our capital plan was really to produce a 10-year capital plan, which includes a 1-year budget, 4-year forecast, and a 5-year outlook. When you get into your binder, you'll find out what, and I have a slide that's coming up, I'll explain to you exactly what that means. But when we put together the capital plans, Kelly and our asset management group and the asset management plans that she's putting together play a key role in helping prioritize which renewal projects get funded or sooner rather than later. The city, of course, has also been planning for growth, so growth management plans play a big part of our capital plan as well. And of course, financial resources. So that again ties into our financial policy framework. How much can we afford? And these are the parameters that we use. And then finally, do we have the staff to deliver? So all these go into the big mix to help our develop our capital plan, which we review every year. So in a nutshell, what council is being asked to approve this year is there's a 89 million of previously approved capital budget. So what you're being asked to approve is an additional 271 million. So the grand total previously approved plus the 271 is a 360 million capital plan. So that what that means is staff have capital approval to spend that money. And in the binder, you'll see that's from 2023, I believe, for the next 5 years. You'll also find when you get into the budget, there's also a line that's a forecast. So it's kind of forecasting out what's beyond. So we're not asking you to approve spending of that forecasted number, just to allow you to know that these are numbers that we anticipate to do. But when we ask for approval to spend it, we'd be bringing that forward next year. So big part of capital planning is putting the expenses together, and then equally the big question is how do you fund it? So as you can see, we fund our capital plan from our own capital reserves, our debentures, we use debt. We use our user rate reserves, so that would be water, wastewater, parking, and now the newest revenue source we'll be using is a stormwater user rate. Just a high level to focus on the tax capital reserve. So what this slide's telling you is the highlighted column there that says uncommitted, overcommitted reserve balance. At the end of 2023, we're showing that we're anticipating our tax capital reserve will be uncommitted, so $16 million available that has not been committed. And that sounds like a lot of money, but I think when you realize the city owns $5 billion in assets, and I think about $3 billion of those roads and that sort of thing are funded from the tax capital reserve, that's not a lot of free and clear money, so to speak. And right now, the way the capital plan's built, you can see that we're going to lower that reserve balance over the next 2 years. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. 2027, you can see it starting to go back up. The assumption is that for this to work, if the expenditures are approved, there's also an assumption that the 1% annual DERF would go up as well to help us get to that point. And just to highlight our debt forecast, so right now at the end of 2022, our outstanding debt was $306 million. We're forecasting some debt in 2023 to get us to $321 million. And you can basically see that's on the left-hand side. It peaks in 2026 and then begins to drop in 2027. What I would highlight on this slide is 59% of our debt is funded from development charges. So a lot of that debt that's outstanding, a lot of it relates to the water plant that was built, this was 10 or 12 years ago. There was a lot of work done in the wastewater plant, the sewage plant. And then we've also built first responders. There's some costs in there related to that. But a lot of the debt is past years. So on the right-hand side, we're calling out the annual debt servicing costs. So if you have a mortgage, these are your monthly payments or your annual payments. So for the city of Barrie in 2023, we paid $41 million to service our debt. And again, 59% of that is funded from development charges. The next largest revenue source to pay the annual debt is from the taxes, and it's about 13% of that total. So next steps in the budget, I've kind of explained or reminded you all, we're back here February 1st for the service partners, and then February 18th is General Committee, and hopefully passing of the budget on February 15th with Council. We have developed a process with Council, between Council and staff in past years, where we encourage you as you read the binder and come up with questions, you can email them to the budget.questions@barrie.ca email address. And the way we have handled it is there's some complexity, as you know, and you'll read through, and there'll be some complex questions, and they take a bit of time to get the answers you're looking for. So generally speaking, we ask if you can get us your questions during a week, by the end of the day of a Wednesday, then staff are going to try and commit and distribute the responses at the end of the day on Friday. So each week we'll do a release if we have questions and answers over the next 4-week period. So we have found it's pretty efficient. You have the information, we're sharing it all with you, and you're all seeing the same level of explanation. There is no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question. They're all good questions. So please ask away, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miller, for your presentation this evening. And I'm not looking at my notes, but I'm guessing if I looked at my notes, it would be to reinforce the ask the questions and get all of the answers in advance so that we can be coordinated and collaborating both with staff and each other as we go through this process. Are there any questions or concerns from Mr. Miller here after his presentation? Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Mr. Miller. As always, thank you for putting together a really, I'll say, I'm able to understand it, and I know how complex it is when we get into this, but for a public level, and also for us from a starting point, I really appreciate the layout and how you present the information forward. To that, I wanted to ask if at this point in time, I know you indicated to me that the public will have access to the budget and the binders, and I believe that's through the website you put up, barrie.ca/budget. Could you speak to the process for the public watching too about, sometimes we do a really great job around engaging the public in the budget. I think we've done that. That, I think, view is closed, so now it's more around following the process of council deliberations. Is that correct, or could you speak to the public's ability to follow along in the process over the next month?
So through you, Mayor Nuttall, thanks for the question. Councillor Kundal, thanks for reminding me I was supposed to announce that the budget binder is actually on the city's website now, thanks to the team in Access Barrie as of 7 o'clock, so it is available to everyone to review. In terms of the process, the budget survey that was put out, that information is being collected and will be distributed to council. We've usually done that through the budget staff report that you'll be getting in a few weeks. Members of the public are also able to email questions, and they have in the past through the budget.questions@barrie.ca, and staff will take those questions, we'll share them with you, and we'll respond to the residents as well. And it's an iterative process over the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Miller. I'll echo Councillor Kungal's comments. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's very helpful, especially as a new councillor. I will hold off on the majority of my questions until after I dig into the two binders that we received this evening. But just on slide 5, you mentioned 2023 and beyond. So Bill 23 is obviously going to have an impact on developmental charge collections. I just want to clarify, because we've heard other municipalities talk, and even our own talk, about what that impact is going to look like and how that's basically or probably going to transcend into increases in property taxes. The impacts of Bill 23 have not been incorporated into this budget, I'm assuming, that will take place towards next budget. So we haven't accounted for any of those impacts at this point, correct?
So through you, Mayor Nuttall, thanks for the question. Great question. So not directly. So the impacts of Bill 23 aren't immediate. They're over a period of time with the changes in legislation. So for Barrie, based on what we've looked at, we expect to see approximately about a 10% reduction in development charges. If you blew that out over 5 years, that could be up to $90 million. Having said that, staff are working on a new development charge background study, which we're going to bring to you in the spring. We're going to have a really good understanding of the true impact. And at that point in time is when I think we'll be able to assess and develop a strategy with you on how to deal with that. So in 2023, sure, there will be an impact, but financially, I think it's more the outer years. A lot of the changes in Bill 2023, the municipalities that are being impacted that approved the bylaw last year and had large increases, those have now been capped because they can only charge 80% of it in year 1. Our last full bylaw update was in 2019, so the immediate impacts aren't as great in 2023. 2023 and 2024, we definitely will feel the effects of it. And as I say, we'll have a clear picture in the spring this year, and we'll be able to work on what that looks like.
I just have one follow-up question, if that's okay. Actually, it's a completely different question, but and I'm just looking for clarification here. So when we look at, we've talked about affordable housing and the crisis that we're facing and the shortage of rental units as well in Barrie. When you look at property taxes, is there a direct correlation between an increase in property tax that enables landlords to increase rental above the, I think it's 2.5% cap that's been placed for 2023?
So I'm not an expert on landlords and tenants and rent caps and that sort of thing. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's an increase in a property's taxes, depending on the lease that they have, there may be pressure on them to increase to recover those costs, but I'm not an expert to be able to speak to the true impact of rents and landlords. I don't know if anyone else on staff wants to take that one.
I'm only asking because I'm trying to figure out, as we start with the 3.95 as a starting point, again, what those impacts are going to be. And I thought I read somewhere or heard somewhere that when you reach a certain threshold and property tax increases, it does enable increases in rental charges as well. So I just wanted to fully understand what that threshold was. But perhaps I can take it back and look at it.
Councillor Hamilton, I'm sure we can get you that information during the week this week.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Ask another question, yes?
Thank you. Through that conversation, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Mr. Miller, as you were talking about the capital plan and it being a 10-year plan and cost cascade year over year, and in the past where we've maybe deferred the start of a capital project or delayed a capital project to outer years, with the DC charges and that whole bylaw piece coming back in the spring, we would have dealt with the capital plan. If there's significance, would council ever relook at the capital plan again, or is the capital plan's approval really only done at the time of the budget, and so we would wait again till next year's budget? Or does it allow us to relook at anything that we need to do from a risk mitigation in year?
So through you, Mayor Nuttall, that's a great question. So to answer your question, you do have an opportunity to look at the capital plan at any time. So right now in this budget, we're asking you to approve an additional, I think it was $270 million. When you open your binders and you do your bedtime reading, you're going to see a line in there over the next 5 years. In addition to that 270, there's another 780 million forecasted to be spent. And a lot of that you'll find is renewal works that's needed, and it's growth costs. So the impact, there's time still for us to understand, and the next budget cycle in 2024, the conversations may be totally different. If there's a funding shortfall, we're going to bring that forward to you, and Ballard and his team's one option could be deferring of projects, moving things out. The challenge with capital projects, and my colleagues around the table could certainly speak this better than I, is all the planning that goes into it. Once you go out for construction tender, and you issue that contract, you can't turn back. You're committed. So between there are opportunities to pull back on your cost, but we do have to be cognizant of the overall financial health. So to answer your question, you absolutely will have an opportunity to revisit the capital plan. And I think a lot of the plans you'll see that are coming forward, these aren't new projects to those that have been around council. I think where we are financially, what we know today, we have enough money in the reserves to fund what we're recommending today. 7-8 months from now, we might have a different conversation before we enter into more larger capital projects. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Yeah, just one question, because obviously it jumps out to me on your chart there on slide 6, that maintaining current service levels for city operations is almost 8.2 million for 2.66%. Are you able to quickly highlight where you see the vast majority of the strains when it comes to having that type of an impact when it comes to just maintaining our current service levels?
Your microphone there, Mr. Miller.
Sorry, thank you. Again, great question. And if I just advance. So it's the top line, so maintaining current service levels, so if we don't do anything. So again, I'll stress that we're in an environment where inflation is the highest it's been in 30 years. It's 8%. So those inflationary costs are in this number. So new contracts that we're signing, every business is asking for more money to deal with inflation. To deliver the services we provide at the city and municipalities, you need people. So there is labor cost in here. There was a contract was negotiated. I believe it's 2% for QP, and then there's the fire contract as well that's in that cost. But there are also opportunities in there. There are some fee increases in there for some of our programs to help offset the costs increases. I'd also highlight that line item has actually removed, because we're shifting to a user pay system for stormwater, there's $3 million of operating costs that have come off that line item now and will be paid for by users on the stormwater. So the impact is, it's real for sure. I would say it's when you consider our 60 plus services, it's not a terrible number in the inflationary environment that we're working in. The city does, there's a section in the binder, in our financial policy framework, there is a principle about respect for the taxpayer and finding efficiencies. And there's a section in the binder where we do highlight efficiencies that staff have been working on, cost avoidance initiatives that have helped keep some of these costs down. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah, no, thank you. Actually, it does highlight, obviously I knew inflationary was going to play probably the biggest part in that. But yeah, no, I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to open the binder yet to see for myself, so I'm just wondering at a high level, because I'm sure the public watching this too, that number might have caught their attention, but obviously we can see that with some other maneuvering when it comes to the budget that there's been some dramatic decreases to offset some of the increases, or else we would have seen a much higher number than 3.95, I gather. Thank you. And actually, just to Councillor Hamilton's question there, when it comes to the Landlord Tenant Advisory Board, for rental increases, for 2023, they're capped at 2.5. However, that still doesn't stop a landlord from filing for an appeal to, if they can justify rental increases higher than that. So it is a real concern.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for your questions and also the information there. Councillor Negussi, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Can we go to slide 15? I'm just curious, why is a year 25's forecast debt level is lower than 24, the same as 27 and 26? I'm just curious, I didn't get the, yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, through you, Mayor Lehman. Sorry, the question was why is the debt level lower in 24 than?
25th is lower than 24.
So the question is, with regards to 23 is lower than 24, but then 25 is lower than 24 as well. So why is it going up and down?
So there are some moderate increases in debt proposed. When you see your binder, I think we have $23 million of new debt in the 2023 budget. At the same time, we are paying debt each year. So there are debt that have been issued the last 10 years. Their principals are lowering. So then we are adding a bit of new debt to it, not a ton. So it does kind of move up and down a little bit. The general trend at this point is the hoping that beyond 2027 we'll be able to continue that trajectory down. But again, it will really depend on the capital works that are needed on renewal, but more so on the growth side, and how we fund those will determine the overall trajectory. I would point out that municipalities, we're regulated on everything we do, and debt's no different. So the province does have a debt ceiling where municipalities can issue debt. You have to maintain an annual repayment limit of 25%. You can't go over it of your own source revenues. So those would be your taxes, user fees, that sort of thing. So 25% of your total, you can't go over that to be used for debt servicing costs. Standard & Poor's would kill our credit rating if we ever went to 25%, so we're much lower than that. We actually our financial policies have a ceiling of 20% of our own source revenues, but right now I believe we're at 11%. As staff, we'd certainly always be recommending there's a range we wouldn't go over because we are very cognizant of trying to keep an eye on our debt ceiling. So while it is a large number, it's I would say with the rating that we got last year, where Standard & Poor's improved our rating to AA+, we're still within a reasonable amount to afford the city right now.
Thank you, Councillor Neguse. Any other? Oh, Councillor Ritma. Just following up on that question, I'm just looking at the blue bars that represent the development charge borrowing, and it's a little hard to see, but it seems to me that we're not borrowing for development charges at all, and that some of that's going to be paid off at 2027. Am I correct in that, or are we? It looks like that bar is equally long all the way across.
So yeah, you're through your Mayor now. You've got great eyesight that you can actually try
I got my glasses.
kind of try and keep the scale on it to see what it knows. So yeah, correct. If you look at that at a high level, it looks like less of our debt in the future will be from development charges. What I will say is, last year, if you had looked at this graph, it would have went the other way. So the amount of debt we issue for growth-related projects will depend on how much money we have in our reserves. So the past 2 years, you're seeing returns happen to the city. We've had a year, 2022, we collected $100 million in development charges. The year before, we collected $100 million. But if you go back 2 years ago, we collected $29 million, and it was like that more or less since I've been here at the city for about 10 years. So $29 million, our debt servicing costs alone are $24 million on DCs. So as a result, because we've collected more revenues, we have a forecast. It's very difficult to forecast annually, year to year, how much you're going to collect in development charges because they're so dependent on the development industry and the economy. Because we had more on the books right now, we removed some of the forecasted debt because we have the reserves. In a year from now, 2 years from now, if the trend changes the other way, we may need to go back to adding more debt. So that's kind of the logic as to why you're seeing it decrease a bit. We're issuing less at this point, but again, this is before Bill 23 came along. So at this point, this time next year, we may have a bit of a different trajectory. But bottom line is 59%, almost 60% of our debt is paid for from development charges. And it's an important fact that it's really for the growth infrastructure.
Just a follow-up on that. So I take it that we are able to match, if you will, the amount of money coming in from development charges to the amount of money that we're spending on servicing or that kind of thing. Are we able to do that fairly accurately, just sort of one for one coming in and going out? Or is that going to be difficult?
Difficult. But we will try.
Enough said.
CEO Prowse. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and to members of committee, council, sorry. I would just certainly remember, returning members of council will remember within the last 2 years, we were reporting that in fact we were overcommitted on development charges by about $120 million at that time. So that was a situation where we continued to invest in pipes and in infrastructure required to facilitate the growth that we knew at some point was coming, but hadn't yet materialized. And as Mr. Miller has highlighted, the last 2 years for the city of Barrie really were record years when it comes to development charges, and we actually were able to collect about $100 million in each of those years. So we were certainly, I would describe, underwater 2 years ago, and we are now at a equilibrium, and I think, as they say, we shall see what the future holds as it relates to development charges.
We're now treading water. Any other questions? I have a few, and first of all, I want to thank Mr. Miller for spending some time with me today to go over the presentation. It is obviously an important subject in terms of the budget of the city. Mr. Miller, if it's okay, I just want to walk through a couple, maybe slide by slide. In terms of I'll actually start at slide 9 because some of the other questions have actually already been asked. In terms of the stormwater charge, so what we've done is we've taken that off of the operating budget, out of the operating budget, and applied that based on those people who are responsible, essentially. But the first, just to confirm what you said in your presentation, the first 3 months is essentially being covered by our internal reserves, and then after those 3 months, for the remaining 9 months of the year, starting April 1st, each either business or individual will be responsible for their portion of the stormwater charge. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall, that is correct. That's what's currently proposed in the plan.
Okay, so in terms of examples of the previously approved versus a new piece in terms of the capital plan, can you give me an example of a previously approved item in the capital plan that's, there's $89 million worth of what we've already spent essentially out of our $360 million plan, roughly call it 25%. Do you have an example of something that we've approved in the past?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall. Yeah, so the nature of capital works is it's multi-year for various things. So some of the previously approved money in there would have been related to, some of it would have been related to the Operations Center Master Plan implementation, so costs related to the Ops Center. There's also money in there related to water and wastewater works. There's also money in there for conventional transit bus replacement program. So those are previously approved. Can't spend it all in 1 year. They're all multi-year types of projects. In terms of new funding in the $271 million, you'll see it's a lot of infrastructure, pipes in the ground and that sort of thing. But it does include continuation of the road resurfacing program. It also includes permanent traffic calming. So those are new dollars that staff are asking you to spend. When you get into your binders, you can find there's a lot of listing of projects in there, and you'll be able to flip through them all to see what makes up those new spendings you're being asked to approve.
Thank you. And in terms of the 5-year plan here in our capital budget, the tax capital reserve balance is low, was the headline of slide 14. It appears that may be the understatement of the year. In 2024, our closing balance is projected to be about 1.6 million. In 2025, it's projected to be 825,000. You mentioned a number, which was about $3 billion in roads, sewers, et cetera, correct?
Correct. Overall, the city owns $5 billion of assets. So we fund some of those assets, the water assets, the wastewater assets get funded from the water wastewater capital. We'll now have a stormwater asset, which will get funded from stormwater. So the remaining assets, roads, sidewalks, that sort of thing are called, they'd be tax capital funded. So they'd be around total approximately $3 billion in give or take. So yes, so it's low for that amount of, so what I would just emphasize too, these are uncommitted dollars that's available.
So, yeah, to go back to that, so we have $825,000 on a $5 billion asset value. We talk a lot about development charges right now, a lot about the impacts of Bill 23, which has nothing to do with this. This is a separate issue, correct?
It will contribute to it because this reserve, while it is funding our capital assets, you are required to fund some of the benefit to existing on growth projects, and that does come from this reserve as well. So As we work through Bill 23, there could be more pressure on this, but we'll address that and develop a strategy. So mainly think of this as a renewal fund, but it does fund some elements to support growth.
Okay. I'll leave that there at this point. With regards to page 15, and I spent a lot of years in finance. Still was very surprised by this. The city's 5-year plan has a total debt of $321 million in 2023. It rises to $327 million in 2027. Like, it's nominal. It's not much at all. It's not much of a change when you consider the gross numbers we're dealing with. It's a 1.8% increase in debt. In that same time period, those same 5 years, the cost of servicing debt is going from $41 million to $50 million, or a 21.2% increase. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's pretty accurate. Yes, correct.
So when we're looking at the development charges on here, and Councilor Rittman had some great points. When we're looking at the development charges on here, you know, it almost feels like a bit of a shadow game related to where it comes from, because if we weren't paying X amount of dollars to service our debt, we're going to be building something with them or contributing them to a project somewhere. But if we see a 10% reduction in our DCs, I assume that we're going to be flipping back a page and going, okay, we have $825,000. And so I'm guessing that is a very simple way to explain the ramifications of Bill 23. In the sense that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the sense that if the DCs aren't there, we're going to our tax capital reserve. The tax capital reserve or other reserves aren't there to be able to pick it up. It's got to come from somewhere. And where does that inevitably end up being? It ends up being the municipal taxpayer. Is that kind of the projections we're talking about, the things we're hearing in the media?
That's the theory, in isolation, if you're not collecting the DCs. So for Barrie, it's the debt servicing costs. If you're not collecting those DC revenues, this debt's issued, you have to pay this no matter what. They don't care how you pay it, you just got to pay it. So if you don't have the DC revenues to pay it, then you've got to pay it for somewhere else.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation this evening. And certainly, just one more time to remind everybody, please use, members of the public, members of council, please use the next couple of weeks to either provide ideas, ask questions, and to get information. And I say members of the public as well as members of council, because I believe we have a very strong council. I believe we have incredibly strong staff, but we always look for opportunities and ideas that are coming from the outside in as well. So if you have any at home, please pass them on to us so that we can look at where they might fit in with the city of Barrie. Thank you again, Mr. Miller, for your presentation this evening. Now that we have completed the presentations this evening, we'll move on to inquiries. Are there any inquiries on my right? None. Any inquiries on my left? Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. Quick question to City Clerk. Could you provide us an expectation of when we're going to see the timer on the screens for deputations? I know that I brought that up at a meeting in December or November.
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councilor Morales. I have not had an opportunity to work with facilities, but I will, it's on my list, and we will get it up as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Morales. Are there any other questions or inquiries? Seeing none, we will move on to announcements. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Councilor Corser.
Okay, to celebrate Family Literacy Day, January 27th, Sunnydale Park is holding an outdoor winter reading room. And the public is invited to join City of Barrie, Barrie Public Library, and Nature Barrie to sit by a cozy fire and read a book. And if you do not have a book on the go, the Barrie Public Library will be there on site with some books available.
Thank you, Councillor Corser. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. I've got 3 announcements. You might have noticed my jersey. So I have the great benefit of always getting to celebrate the Barrie Sharks playing at the East Bayfield Community Centre. So some of my announcements kind of run the theme of hockey, and considering the motion without notice tonight, great to see again us putting a spotlight on sport in the city. So I wanted to highlight that in addition to the conversation about hockey, on February the 11th, there is a special event happening that's moving through media a little bit, and I wanted to identify that PWHPA Hockey has identified that there's a professional women's hockey game coming to Barrie. So if you're interested, if this is up your alley, on February the 11th, come join me at the Sadlin Center. Tickets are on sale. Proceeds of these $20 tickets, I believe $5, go to our Barrie Sharks team. So you are supporting our local Women in Sports and Hockey Association. So you can find out information at www.pwhpabarrie.com. And again, that's happening Saturday, February the 11th, 2023, 1 p.m. at the Sadlin Arena. And $5 again goes to our Sharks if, when you purchase your ticket, use the promo code SHARKS. I'd also like to announce that for Ward 3 residents, and happy to extend this more broadly, I have been able to acquire a ton of rec passes. So I was at the East Bayfield Community Centre today. I have used some of my councillor funds to acquire passes and would love to look at opportunities to bring people into our facilities. So in particular to schools in Ward 3, I'll be reaching out to you to try and offer some passes to students and kids. If you in the community want to identify an act of kindness or something someone has done, please share that with the City of Barrie, and happy to support that. I will be posting on my Councillor Kungle Facebook page opportunities to meet me for a skate or for a pickup, pickleball and whatnot, and we'll identify passes available. So again, this is around creating opportunities for individuals who wouldn't otherwise have yet to try our facilities to come on out. For those, again, that may have challenges having discretionary dollars, please reach out to staff. There is Rec Access, which is a program that does support individuals maybe on limited incomes. And then lastly, when you're off the ice doing land training, you can meet me at Georgian Mall. And so Walk With Me Wednesdays is back. I am at the mall, at the Georgian Mall, from 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. every Wednesday morning. Thank you to staff there. We have a historical group that walks every day. So if you want to join me in a walk and talk and get some steps in while you're at it, every Wednesday you can find me there, 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Are there any announcements on my left? Seeing none, I have a few for this evening. Citizen applications are now being accepted for the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee, Arts Advisory Committee, Communities in Bloom Committee, Seniors and Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the Town and Gown Committee. The application deadline is Friday, February 17th at 4:30 p.m. For more information, email cityclerks@barrie.ca or visit barrie.ca/committees and task forces. Applications for the Arts and Culture Investment Program are being accepted until February the 15th. The program strengthens Barrie's arts and culture community through strategic investments in the work of not-for-profit arts and culture organizations. For more information, please visit barrie.ca/ACIP. The city is looking for community input to help evaluate the 2021 Barrie Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and progress the action items of the plan to support one of Council's strategic priorities of community safety. The survey deadline is January the 20th. To access the survey, visit barrie.ca/CSWB. E-billing is now available for water and wastewater bills. Sign up for e-billing by logging in or creating an online water billing account and get notified by email when your bill is due. visit barrie.ca/water billing. The city will be celebrating winter at the Barrie Winterfest on February 4th and 5th, located at Heritage Park and downtown. Winterfest is a community tradition and one of the top winter festivals in Ontario. Enjoy spectacular ice and snow sculptures, lumberjack shows, polar bear dip, family entertainment, drop-in activities, skating, and much more. Again, visit barrie.ca/winterfest for more information. As a reminder, overnight on-street parking and waterfront parking restrictions are still in effect until March 31st, 2023. For more information, please visit barrie.ca/snow and barrie.ca/parking. Now that announcements are complete, we will move on to the bylaws. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales. Leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 1 and 2.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Morales, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 001 and 002. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's approved. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morales. Leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bill 003.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councilor Morales that the confirmation bylaw, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. This is Bill 003. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Do I have a mover and I have a mover in Councilor Rittman. He doesn't know what it's for yet, but I have a mover in Councilor Rittman. Do I have a seconder, Councilor Nixon, for adjournment? All those in